Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will begin the program shortly.
Biodiversity. It means all the different species of plants, animals, fish, birds, insects, and all the different kinds of life around us. Biodiversity is essential to our survival. The vast array of species and ecosystems in our lands and seas shields us from the shocks of extreme changes in our climate. Biodiversity regulates the atmosphere for clean air and fresh water. It makes our lands fertile and supplies us with medicines. But if we lose more and more species, the more our ecosystems weaken, and the more we threaten our own survival. The Philippines is one of only 17 countries in the entire world that is mega diverse. Of the 52,000 species, more than half of them are unique in all the world. If we lose them, the world loses them. Biodiversity is also important to our economy. The viability of our agriculture, fisheries, and forestry sectors depends on our biodiversity, providing jobs and helping us achieve inclusive growth for our people. Biodiversity provides an estimated 2.9 trillion pesos per year in benefits and services to our economy. But we are continuously threatening our biodiversity with overexploitation, destruction of natural habitats, climate change, pollution, and introduction of invasive alien species. Our future depends on us arresting these threats. Investment in this crucial area has been alarmingly small. From 2008 to 2013, our country's level of spending for biodiversity conservation was only about 4.9 billion pesos annually, equivalent to a mere 0.08% of GDP and 0.31% of the national budget. As a party to the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Philippines has formulated a roadmap towards biodiversity conservation. That is, the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Implementing and achieving the plan's targets will contribute to realizing the country's Ambisyon Natin 2040 and the administration's 10-point agenda. It also contributes to achieving the 20 Aichi biodiversity targets and the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. The Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan requires an investment of 23.9 billion pesos every year until 2028. Set against our government's current allocation of 4.9 billion, there is an 80% financing gap that urgently needs to be filled to successfully implement the plan. The Biodiversity Finance Initiative, or BioFin in the Philippines, helps close the funding gap for the implementation of our national plan. BioFin brings a new way of biodiversity management through sound finance and economic thinking. This initiative aims to mobilize new resources to finance nature and sustainable development, deliver better and more efficient biodiversity outcomes, improve spending efficiency, and choose current investments that save money for the future. The BioFin process uses a series of assessments to help create the blueprint for conservation, the biodiversity policy and institutional review, the biodiversity expenditure review, a financial needs assessment, and the biodiversity finance plan. BioFin is initiating several finance solutions and vision to mobilize resources amounting to 20 billion pesos by 2020. Finance solutions are strategies aimed at opening multiple sources of funding to allow the Philippines to implement our national and local biodiversity finance plans and projects. They can be used alone or in different combinations to create new products that can make biodiversity projects more effective. For finance solutions aimed at supporting national agencies, moves will be made to develop an investment program for protected areas, realign DENR budgets, help advocate for increased funding among other national government agencies, state colleges, and universities, maximizing the Integrated Protected Areas Fund and Environmental Trust Funds. For finance solutions aimed at strengthening local government action, the plan aims to increase LGU's own resources of revenues for locally managed protected areas, improve access for earmarked funds, and fund transfers for projects. For finance solutions involving the general public, the plan envisions crowdfunding among citizens and mobilizing the diaspora community. For finance solutions targeted to the private sector, the plan aims to tap corporate social responsibility programs, harness public-private partnerships for the protected areas sector, explore impact investments, and create new sources of revenues from sales of gaming apps and other products. BioFin helps foster better communication and collaboration between government, civil society, and the private sector. It raises the importance of nature in national planning and budgeting for sustainable development. It also fosters knowledge sharing and cooperation among countries. With BioFin, we will be able to plan and implement innovative solutions to finance conservation and protect our biodiversity for ourselves today and in the future. BioFin, Finance for Nature.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ceremonial launch of the Integrated Approach and Management of Major Biodiversity Corridors in the Philippines, or BD Corridor Project. We are honored and grateful that you've taken the time to join us this afternoon. My name is Charlene Balan of the UNDP Philippines, and I am your host for this afternoon's brief program. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources Biodiversity Management Bureau, with support from the United Nations Development Program in the Philippines, will be implementing the BD Corridor project with the primary objective of operationalizing the integrated management of biodiversity corridors to generate multiple benefits, including the effective conservation of globally threatened species and high conservation value forests, reduction of deforestation and degradation, and enhancement of local biodiversity friendly livelihoods. Further, it is designed to address the increasing degradation of wetland habitats caused by deforestation and conversion to agricultural lands, expanding infrastructure development, pollution, invasive alien species, and climate change. I believe that we will have an opportunity to learn more about the project in a while. At this point, I would also like to note that tomorrow is the biggest global day for positive environmental action all over the world. The 2021 World Environment Day aims to rally the urgent action needed to prevent, halt, and reverse the loss of ecosystems. These next 10 years matter the most in preventing catastrophic climate change and bending the curve on biodiversity loss. With the campaign Reimagine, Recreate, and Restore, we strive for people and organizations to look beyond World Environment Day. We hope to create a global movement that will last a decade and beyond. So, the launch of the BD Corridor project contributes greatly to this mission to restore the ecosystem. So, without further ado, to formally open this morning's program, we will all hear from the resident representative of the United Nations Development Program in the Philippines, Dr. Selva Ramachandran. Dr. Ramachandran is a Malaysian national and a seasoned development practitioner. Prior to his appointment at the UNDP Philippines, he served as the UNDP resident representative and country director of UNDP Sudan, UNDP Country Director in Libya, Chief of Northeast Asia and Mekong Division at the Regional Bureau of Asia and the Pacific in New York, and the UNDP Country Director in Yemen. Esteemed guests, allow me to turn over the floor to Dr. Selva Ramachandran. Over to you, Dr. Selva.
Thank you so much, Cha. It's a wonderful day.
Dr. Selva, perhaps we can ask you to switch on your camera, please. Yes,
Yeah,
thank
is it
you.
okay now?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, good day to all. I was very happy this morning. I participated in the Youth for Climate Action virtual forum, and now this afternoon in the ceremonial launch of BD Corridor project. It's a good feeling. Anyway, to start with, good afternoon, esteemed guests and partners, Honorable Secretary Roy Simatu, Undersecretary Annalisa Tay, with whom we were together this morning as well, Yusek Leonardo, partners in climate action and conservation, friends, good day to everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this ceremonial launch event today. The ceremonial launch of the integrated approach in management of biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, or popularly known as Biodiversity Corridor Project. We would like to express our gratitude to the Office of the President for issuing the special presidential authority that has enabled us to move forward to sign the project document by UNDP, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the National Economic Development Authority, NEDA. I'm certain that our partners have been waiting for this project. This will be a single biggest GEF project in the amount of US $12.12 million that will be implemented in Philippines by UNDP, working closely with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. It is also the first multifocal project, biodiversity and land degradation, that will be implemented in the Philippines under the Global Environment Facility. I must say that in the last 10 years, UNDP has mobilized a total of close to 85, to be precise, 84.7 million US dollars in the Philippines for GF project in partnership with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Through this GF funded project, we have worked with the DENR and their concerned bureaus on formulation of country program document for GF7, preparation of the 6th National Report to Convention on Biodiversity, development of wealth creation program, development and promotion of local conservation areas and indigenous community conservation areas, which have been included in the revised National Protected Area Management System policy as other conservation measures. Biodiversity friendly enterprises, integration of biodiversity in comprehensive land use plans, empowerment of community-based organization on implementing nature-based solutions, improvement of management effectiveness of marine protected area networks, and increasing biodiversity financing, among other key milestones. So we have done a lot working together in the last 10 years, and this relationship and partnership will continue. This activity is also quite timely, as tomorrow we will be commemorating World Environment Day. This year, the commemoration highlights the theme Reimagine, Recreate, Restore. It will focus on resetting our relationship with the nature. Ecosystem restoration pertains to the recovery of ecosystems that have been degraded or destroyed, as well as conserving the ecosystems that are still intact. It can take in many forms such as growing trees, grading cities, coastal cleanups, among others. Today's BD corridor ceremonial launch fits into the global something went wrong. 1 second. Today's BD corridor ceremonial launch fits into the global call to strengthen nature-based solution and climate action. The latest United Nations Development Program Human Development Report, which we launched in January, shows that we need nothing less than a societal transformation if the next frontier of human progress is to succeed. This starts by rejecting the idea that we must choose between people or planet. Human development at the expense of the planet is not the development at all. I think it's very important to underscore. Human development at the expense of the planet is not the development at all. Furthermore, the 5th edition of the UN's Global Biodiversity Outlook Report in 2020 put emphasis on addressing climate change and long-term food security and concludes that action to protect biodiversity is essential to prevent the pandemics. Elizabeth Mrema, the Executive Director of the Convention on Biological Diversity, rightly said that as nature degrades, new opportunities emerge for the spread to humans and animals, devastating diseases like coronavirus. The window of time available is short, but the pandemic has also demonstrated that transformative changes are possible when they must be made. This project highlights the necessity of sustaining the interconnectivity of various ecosystems in the central Mindoro Biodiversity Corridor and Eastern Mindanao Biodiversity Corridor, which has been chosen mainly because of their critical importance as the centers of endemism, biodiversity hotspot, and economic significance. We hope that this project will support the government in achieving its biodiversity-related targets outlined in Philippines' Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan and in our international commitments. The UN Biodiversity Outlook Report highlights that none of the Aichi biodiversity targets related to safeguarding ecosystems and the promotion of sustainability have been fully met, and only 6 have been partially achieved. While the BD Corridor project aims to strengthen the ecosystem interconnectivity, we would also like to improve through the policy and institutional intervention of project, the governance mechanism that support biodiversity management both at national and at local levels. This project will weave together the related mandates and how this can be operationalized of the DENR, the Bureau of Soils and Water Management of the Department of Agriculture, and the National Commission on Indigenous People. This is not an easy project to be implemented, but with the support from key agencies and stakeholders, we hope to see a holistic, multi-sectoral, and integrated ecosystem management approach to resource governance put into practice and sustained. For this project, our non-government organization partners, as well as academic research institutions, will be also supporting DENR through our project implementation. The Mandanas ruling, expected to be rolled out next year, we see this project providing guidance to the LGUs in increasing public investment on improved biodiversity management. I believe that strengthening the participatory bottom-up planning and implementation approach that focuses on local priorities and decisions that integrate conservation, sustainable resource use, climate risk management, and biodiversity conservation is essential for sustainability, national ownership, and effective paradigm shift. Thus, we see the participation of our indigenous peoples and local communities at the very core of this project. In fact, this project aims to provide support to IPLCs that are linked to changes in desired practices and behaviors. We envision our communities not only having a voice during local planning processes, but also economically benefiting from the project interventions. We put significance to supporting development activities that protect community rights over biodiversity resources. Moreover, private sector participation will also be sought throughout project implementation. We would like to provide demonstration models where private sector partners in both corridors are actively contributing to improve biodiversity management, either through modified business models integrating conservation or doing biodiversity offsets. We look forward to commencing the project activities after this ceremonial launch. We are grateful for all project partners who have taken time today to join this activity. Your support will be pivotal in the success of this initiative. Let me once again mention how I'm happy I am to be here. I came to Philippines in October 2020, and since then I've been fully briefed on the importance of this project, and I'm very happy to see the realization through the ceremonial launching of what we are witnessing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Selva. And as you've mentioned, the BD Corridor project will be the biggest Jeff supported project that would be implemented in the country and by UNDP. It is also the first multifocal project that will be implemented in the Philippines under Jeff. So we are very excited and we are very happy to see so many partners and stakeholders who have joined us for this afternoon's launch. Today, we are also honored to be supported by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, one of UNDP's most steadfast partners in climate action in the country, and our main partner for the implementation of the BD Corridor project. We have a message from no other than the DENR Secretary, retired General Roy Sematu, who unfortunately cannot join us this afternoon due to another commitment. Here's his message.
UNDP President Representative Selva Ramachandran and CIP Chairperson Allen Capuyan, BSWM Director Sonia Salguero, our other guests, my esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all. It is an honor to welcome all of you to the inauguration of a monumental project, the integrated approach in the management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines project. This is in fact the largest global environment facility funded project. It is timely that we are holding this today because it is the beginning of the Philippine Eagle Week, the celebration of our national bird and the crown jewel of Philippine biodiversity. The Philippine eagle is the largest eagle in the world, endemic to the country, and is one of the species that regulate the population of smaller animals that may cause damage to humans and agriculture. The presence of these eagles in the forest is an ecological indicator of a rich and biodiverse environment. What can be a better time than to launch the Biodiversity Corridor project this month when we are celebrating the Philippine Environment Month. This project is aimed to address multiple threats to biodiversity by harmonizing socioeconomic development, sustainable management of land, forest, and other natural resources, and biodiversity conservation through an integrated management approach in biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, particularly in the Eastern Mindanao and Central Mindoro biodiversity corridors. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources will closely work on this project with the United Nations Development Program, which has been our steadfast partner in developing and implementing a number of foreign-assisted projects, especially in the biodiversity sector. We also look forward to more strengthened collaboration with agencies such as the National Economic Development Authority, Department of Agriculture, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Tourism, the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, Department of Interior and Local Government, as well as civil society and private sector groups. Jointly, we aim to achieve benefits for the national government, 24 municipal local government units, and at least 65,000 individuals from 15,000 households in Region 4B Mimaropa, Region 11 Davao, and Region 13 Caraga, and collectively for humanity and wildlife. Let us all then take flight and soar high in conserving and protecting our biodiversity, sapagkat ikaw, ako, tayo ang kalikasan.
So there you have it, a short video message from our DENR secretary to congratulate all of the stakeholders as well who will be part of the implementation of this landmark project. At this point, we will be showing a clip to introduce the BD Corridor project even further to our participants this afternoon. So this video was produced by the DENR Biodiversity Management Bureau. So thank you so much, DENR BMB, for producing this video. So without further ado, I'm turning over the floor to our digital services team so that we can play the video about the BD Corridor project.
The Philippines is 17 megadiverse countries, collectively hosting more than 70% of the world's species. The archipelago contains a very high degree of plant and animal endemism. Both the marine and terrestrial ecosystems are very diverse, which support a wealth of natural resources and a rich array of species diversity.
I think we are
However,
experiencing
the
some
country is
technical
one of the
difficulties.
hotspots, facing various threats to biodiversity. The DENR, through the Biodiversity Management Bureau,
Sorry about that. We will try to restart the video again. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We will be replaying the video. Hopefully this time we won't experience any type of glitches.
the Philippines is one of the 17 megadiverse countries, collectively hosting more than 70% of the world's species. The archipelago contains a very high degree of plant and animal endemism. Both the marine and terrestrial ecosystems are very diverse, which support a wealth of natural resources and a rich array of species diversity. However, the country is also one of the hotspots, facing various threats to biodiversity. The DENR, through the Biodiversity Management Bureau, in partnership with other agencies and partners, has identified 128 key biodiversity areas, or KBAs, that are of international importance in terms of biodiversity conservation. The National Integrated Protected Areas System Act, or RA 7586, as amended by RA 11038, is the government's primary mechanism to provide protection to KBAs. Through NIPAS, protected areas covers 4.86 million hectares of terrestrial and 3.08 million hectares of marine ecosystems, with a total of 7.76 million hectares. Equally significant RA 11038 also provides for recognition of other area-based conservation measures, such as indigenous community conserved areas and local conservation areas managed by local government units. Yet, the Philippines' natural resources and biodiversity are still facing increasing threats. These are loss and degradation of natural habitats, unsustainable resource use practices, pollution, invasive alien species, and climate change. Thus, there are barriers needed to address in order to improve biodiversity management. Barrier 1 is policies, regulations, and approaches that breed disjointed governance, planning, management, and financing of activities within the biodiversity corridors. Barrier 2, on the other hand, is fragmented implementation of key programs. And Barrier 3 is weak community-level mechanisms to incentivize conservation of biodiversity, promote sustainable natural resource utilization, and monitor compliance.
Given such, the integrated approach in the management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, with funding from the Global Environment Facility, will be implemented by the DENR as the implementing partner, together with its concerned bureaus, with UNDP as the implementing agency, other government agencies and partners, including the Bureau of Soils and Water Management of the Department of Agriculture and the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples.
Its major goal is to address the threats to biodiversity and causes of degradation through harmonization of socio-economic development, sustainable management of natural resources, and biodiversity conservation in biodiversity-rich areas using a landscape planning and management approach.
There are 19 terrestrial biodiversity corridors identified in the Philippines. The two corridors, Mindoro and Eastern Mindanao, have been selected because these represent distinct biodiversity characteristics and forest formations located in different biogeographic zones. Each site offers different sets of challenges for integrated ecosystem management due to the nature and degree of threats they are exposed to. One of the identified sites is the Mindoro Island Biodiversity Corridor. It is the 7th largest island in the Philippines with an area of 436,470 hectares and a population of 1.238 million. It is located between the large islands of Luzon and the Sunda-affiliated Palawan, and it shares faunal attributes of both islands. The primary issue of Mindoro, forest degradation, is severe. Severe forest degradation in the corridor resulted to a number of threatened species such as the Mindoro bleeding heart and tamarao. Drivers of habitat degradation and loss are land use change due to conversion to agriculture and cattle ranching. Deforestation from 2000 to 2016 was recorded to total to 67,375 hectares, while annual deforestation was noted at 4,211 hectares, or equivalent to 100 SM MOAs. On the other hand, the Eastern Mindanao Biodiversity Corridor, or EMBC, is a long stretch of lowland and mid to high elevation forests along the east coast of Mindanao. Dinagat Island marks its northernmost boundary, while Mount Hamiguitan Range is at its southern tip. 8 provinces within this biodiversity corridor is home to the Philippine eagle nonetheless. In this biodiversity corridor, forest loss is described as moderate to severe. Deforestation from 2000 to 2016 was recorded at 100,828 hectares, while annual deforestation is recorded at 6,302 hectares, or 159 SMOAs per year.
The vision of the project is to maximize the opportunity presented by the presence of identified corridors to ensure a holistic approach to their management and generate multiple benefits. This is a huge undertaking in terms of coverage and would require a significant amount of investments. Given that the available resources for this project is limited, it is proposed that a robust, science-based prioritization approach is adapted. To achieve this, the approach is to identify distinct clusters of biologically significant areas. These clusters will represent the most critical areas within the corridors. The approach proposed here is based on 6 principles, namely ecosystems approach, representativeness of ecological viability, evidence-based science, precautionary design, threats reduction, and performance monitoring and accountability.
There are 6 clusters covering 24 municipalities within 2 provinces that have been identified as priority areas to be covered by the project. The total area covers a total of 666,497 hectares. On the other hand, the project has identified 6 clusters covering 93 municipalities in 7 provinces within regions 11 and 13.
The project is designed to achieve long-term environmental impacts of reduction of direct threats on critical species, ecosystems, and biodiversity. This will be achieved to establishing the following institutional and regulatory measures for integrating biodiversity conservation and sustainable natural resource use into sector-specific and sub-national socio-economic development planning and community resource management of biodiversity corridors. In achieving target objective and outcome indicators, the project has 4 components. First is a national policy, regulatory, and governance framework for planning, managing, compliance, monitoring, enforcement, and decision-making for integrated ecosystem management process and utilized for biodiversity corridor. Second is improved site-level planning, regulatory, monitoring, and implementation framework for demonstration of integrated ecosystem planning and management of pilot biodiversity corridors. Next is improved site-level sustainable use and management systems for rich ecosystems and sustainable community and private sector use through biodiversity-friendly, sustainable land and forest management, and sustainable and better targeted community livelihood investments and business ventures. And lastly, is improve awareness and knowledge on biodiversity conservation and its threats that encourage support and commitment from policymakers, planners, and local communities to conservation. The project's incremental value lies in demonstrating the development of participatory natural resources management, enterprise-based sustainable natural resource practices, and sustainable livelihoods for local communities in the selected biodiversity corridors. This approach will concurrently strengthen the conservation of biodiversity, rehabilitate degraded agricultural and forest lands, maintain the connectivity and ecosystem values of these biodiversity corridors, and ameliorate climate change impacts.
Biodiversity corridors. Connect, protect, conserve.
Again, thank you so much to the DENR for producing that video, and we hope that that gave you a broader idea of the coverage of the BD Corridor project, the implementation of the project here in the Philippines. Now, for this afternoon's brief program, we have also invited three stakeholders to give some messages about the importance of the implementation of the BD Corridor project. Our first stakeholder is the OIC Director of the DENR Biodiversity Management Bureau and the Undersecretary for Special Concerns of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Undersecretary Edilberto Leonardo. Welcome, Undersecretary, and I'm turning the floor over to you.
Okay, that's it. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Undersecretary. We can hear you very clearly, sir.
Okay, good afternoon to all. Uh, Almost a year into the preparations for the implementation of the BD Corridor project, here we are at last, ready with this very challenging foreign assisted project. In the midst of this pandemic, we have conducted several preparatory activities involving our national agency partners such as DA, DILG, NCIP, DNR officials, and field personnel. We have constituted the governing and implementation bodies comprising the National Project Board, the Interagency Technical Working Group, and the Project Management Unit at the national level, while the corridor level is now ready to commence once the project document is signed. The BD corridor approach is complex and expansive, with the pilot areas spanning beyond BMB's and even DNR's mandates. It covers protected areas, forest lands, ancestral domain areas, locally conserved areas, and across established political boundaries. This is not new concept or approach though. Several projects or initiatives have employed similar methods before, such as the Natural Resources Management Program. The ongoing National Convergence Initiative is a jumping point. We have to build on from lessons of the past. The scope is daunting, but it illustrates the depth of how biodiversity impacts our lives. The food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe are all there because we take care of our ecosystems and the wildlife that constantly toil to sustain our well-being. Biodiversity underpins our economy and our survival. As this project entails complying with UNDP and the Philippine government planning and reporting requirements, we are grateful for UNDP and the DNR Foreign Assisted and Special Project Service for steering us in taking the necessary steps towards the full national implementation modality. We will join hands to undertake this arduous process with support from DBM, Bureau of Treasury, and NEDA. We look forward to working in partnership with you. The BD Corridor is a trailblazing endeavor. We are full of courage in undertaking this. Padayon at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Leonardo, and we appreciate your presence at this afternoon's ceremonial launch, sir. Our next stakeholder who will be giving a message as well is the chairperson of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, or NCIP. We have Chairperson Mr. Allen A. Capuyan, who has also joined us live this afternoon. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon to all the guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. All across the world, the environmental, ecological, and biodiversity challenges besetting humankind today is very critical. While recent studies have shown that 1 million plant and animal species worldwide are facing extinction, the Philippines is facing the same threats as one of the top 10 globally ranked countries with the most number of species threatened with extinction, despite being one of the world's primary ecological hubs, considering that it currently holds and maintains 5% of the world's plant species. Needless to say, the majority of these threatened ecology and biodiversity areas are located in the indigenous people's land, or simply ancestral domains that imbue indigenous people's world view that nature is sacred and humankind is part of what we call the circle of life, the coexistence of both living and non-living things. Needless to say that these ancestral domains or lands are also the Philippines' first line of defense and the last bastion of our natural resources, our cultural heritage, and biodiversity. Noting this, the National Commission is stepping up and support local, national, and worldwide actions to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of ecosystems, halt and reverse land degradation and biodiversity loss. The integrated approach in management of biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, or the Biodiversity Project launched today, is one of such actions. The NCIP congratulates the United Nations Development Program and other agencies involved for initiating this project, and we are thankful for inviting us to this launching. What then is the role of NCIP in actions or projects to reverse or halt biodiversity loss? Significant to any actions or project where IPs are affected and founded on our national laws, particularly Republic Act 8371, popularly known as the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, is ensuring the participation of indigenous peoples in the entire project development process, from project identification, proposal development, implementation, and post-implementation stages, towards the realization of IP's rights to self-determination, the heart of all of our actions, of course. Participation that includes and interfaces IP's aspirations and perspectives. Aligned with these are the Ancestral Domain Sustainable Development Protection Plans, which are the blueprint of their visions and aspirations on IPs and communities. Of course, ensuring strong and transparent coordination and collaborations between us and domestic or foreign project proponents. We will make sure that the prior informed consent or consensus of IPs is undertaken where it is necessary and thoroughly disclosing the intent and scope of the projects. While many of our government, non-government, and civil society organization partners have been working with us for many decades, empowering IPs, leadership, and socioeconomic systems and structures such as indigenous political structures, or IPS, the indigenous peoples organizations, or IPOs, that evolved from IP traditional or customary laws, including the indigenous peoples' mandatory representation in the local decision-making, coupled with knowledge of IP's histories, are prerequisite in programs, project development processes, and an understanding of IP's current development aspiration and priorities. Thus, monitoring biodiversity projects in ancestral domains is another implied task of NCIP. It facilitates appraising and forewarning the IPs of what experts and scientists are saying, while taking cognizance of their best collective interests, as not all scientific conclusions and actions for addressing biodiversity loss are inclusive of IP's best collective interests. These are but few of our institutional rules, yet such are not the only rules of NCIP, but every one of us, either as duty bearers or proponents and partners in the implementation of national policies. We have our respective rules to play through the lenses of our respective mandates and mission. However, we have to join hands together to provide a progressive narrative that IPs are not helpless victims of biodiversity loss or environmental change. Rather, ancestral domains of IPs are significant repositories of our nation's biodiversity that we owe to our indigenous peoples who have contributed to the very least to the Philippines' environmental problems. Finally, as we look forward to commemorate this World Environment Day with theme ecosystem restoration, we salute and take cognizance of the great contribution of the IPs in the preservation and sustenance of Philippine ecosystems, biodiversity, and cultural heritage. Let us then invite them on the table, not just putting them on the menu. Let us engage with them towards conserving biodiversity, as well as support the rights to ancestral domain, sustainable resources, and well-being. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Kapuyan. And as you've mentioned, we see the participation of our indigenous peoples and local communities at the very core of this project. Our third stakeholder for this afternoon is the OIC Director of the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Soils and Water Management, Director Sonia Salguero. Thank you, Director Sonia, and I'm turning the floor over to you, ma'am.
Ito na. Hi. Ano? Good afternoon to everyone. Indeed, this is a God's blessing that we are healthy and be able to be part of this activity, the virtual launching of the integrated approach in the management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, or the BD corridor. First, let me congratulate the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in the Philippines, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Biodiversity Management Bureau, for the launching of this project on the integrated approach in the management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines. Let me also acknowledge our esteemed speakers, Honorable Secretary Roy Simato of DNR, Undersecretary Annalisa T., the Undersecretary for Climate Change and Mining Concerns of the DNR, Dr. Selva Ramachandran, Resident Representative of the UNDP in the Philippines, Yusek Idalberto Leonardo, Undersecretary for Special Concern, DNR, Mr. Allen Kapuyan, Chairperson, National Commission on Indigenous People, NCIP. Also, let me acknowledge also the other participants from the different offices of DNR bureaus and regional offices, the National Economic and Development Authority, NEDA, and its regional offices, Department of Interior and Local Government and its regional offices, the NCIP and the regional offices, non-government organization, and some of our stakeholders, provincial, city, and municipal local government units. A pleasant good afternoon to all. The Bureau of Soils and Water Management, as one of the responsible partners in the implementation of this project, specifically on Output 3.2 on Sustainable Land Management, SLM, applied to degraded agricultural lands through a suite of SLM technologies, practices, and incentives, sees its great importance in rebuilding the loss of biodiversity in two major corridors in the Philippines, which is Mindoro and Eastern Mindanao, through the successful implementation of the JEF5 SLM project, which gave birth to the supplemental guidelines for maintaining mainstreaming SLM in the comprehensive land use plan of local government units approved by the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board through resolution number 991, series of 2019, along with 6 other knowledge products supported with policy issuances. We were able to prove that SLM is an action against land degradation. Moving forward to this project's implementation, it is indeed very timely that this is also a rising action against environmental degradation, wherein we could further promote effective, adaptive SLM technologies or practices that will teach farmers on sustaining their income while maintaining the fertility of the land. We at the BSWM, together with our partners, firmly believe that we will achieve our objective of operationalizing integrated management of biodiversity corridors to generate multiple benefits, including effective conservation of globally threatened species and high conservation value forests, reduce deforestation, sorry, and enhance local biodiversity-friendly livelihood. At this juncture, I would like to express our commitment in the implementation of the JIP 7 BD Corridor project. Of course, under the leadership of our focal person, Dr. Gina Nilo, the Chief of the Laboratory Services Division. She also lead as the national focal for the JEP 5 SLM project. So rest assured that all learnings from the previous project will be applied. Again, congratulations to UNDP and DMB for this virtual launching of the project integrated approach in the management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines. But before I close, I would like to invite everyone to join us for our toast to partners. One of you or all of you are invited. We will be having our toast to partners in June 14 as part of our celebration of the 70th anniversary of the BSWM. We will be glad if you can join us on that event so that pwede naming magpasalamat sa lahat ng mga naging kapartner namin. So with that, mabuhay tayong lahat and keep safe. God bless us all. Magandang hapon sa lahat.
Salamat po, Director Sonia.
Sorry.
And thank you again to Undersecretary Leonardo and to Chairperson Kapuyan as well. We hope that you can all stay so that we can take a quick photo after the final message from the DENR. At this point, we have a message as well from the Undersecretary of Finance, as Undersecretary for Finance, Information System and Climate Change of the DENR, Attorney Annalisa Te.
Sa wakas, after the tedious process of project concept formulation, project document finalization, and approval, we are at this stage of launching this very important project. Yesterday, we had our management committee conference, and I emphasized that the current budget ceiling does not provide for the sufficient resources to implement the establishment of biodiversity corridors. But I announced that with this GF project, we'll be able to somehow fill in that gap. So let me congratulate and thank everyone who made this possible, the national government agencies, our partners, of course the local government units, CSOs, and other stakeholders, and of course UNDP. But let me also advise everyone that the implementation of this project will be extremely challenging. To be able to successfully deliver the results under this project, a very effective implementation mechanism needs to be in place. For those who have been involved in various projects on biodiversity protection, you see that it's really key, that we gather the important stakeholders on board, and there should be a proper leveling off among them. So we need to understand that various stakeholders involved in the management of the biodiversity corridors have varying interests, commitments, and capacities. So we need to be able to ensure that their role is fully clarified at the very start of the project implementation, and that their active participation is obtained. Of course, there are several ways by which we can do that, and we should learn from our experiences. We also need to see how we can mobilize the private sector to invest resources in promoting biodiversity corridors. But aside from these challenges, there are also opportunities open here. I always mention about the Mandanas ruling, which allows the local government units increase revenue by 56%. And with that opportunity, we can convince the local government units and to undertake co-management of protected areas or with the communities where such management models are appropriate, and activities including those that support the recognition and realization of the rights of IPs if there are in the areas that are being selected or that have been selected. So as we ready for the implementation proper, let me just flag some areas which we need to consider. We need to show how this project will contribute in our heightened response to the pandemic and contribute significantly to green recovery pathways. Jeff will look for this, but even if Jeff does not look for this, we should be able to ensure that our project will contribute or is in accordance with our green recovery response. Let me also emphasize that in the course of implementation of this project, we should keep in mind that the GEF, in its 8th replenishment strategy on biodiversity, proposes a concept that moves beyond the concept of conservation corridors, which are mostly defined by biological considerations, and encompasses a more fluid and organic understanding of landscape level ecosystem promises and management requirements within and beyond the protected area themselves. Said strategy assumes that a more integrated and complementary approach to protected areas and protected landscape seascape investment reflects the realities of most of the GEF recipient countries and is likely to achieve more durable results in conservation, sustainable use, and restoration. Under this project, we also need to consider strongly demonstrating improving financial sustainability, effective management, and ecosystem coverage of protected areas. The challenge of the current health crisis due to the pandemic is, of course, a major consideration in crafting our implementation plan. Honestly, I am excited with this project, with all the challenges awaiting us, but most of all, the promise and hope that this effort offers for our environment, our communities, our future. So we look forward working with you in this project. Let us build back better, bluer, greener, and healthier. Maraming salamat po.
There you have it, the message from Undersecretary Annalisa Te of the DENR. We would like to mention before we end this afternoon's program that the DENR BMB, together with other project partners, will be conducting an inception workshop to kickstart the implementation activities. Key stakeholders and partners will be receiving the invitation for that inception workshop as well. We are also in the process of getting all of the signatures for the project document of the implementation of the BD Corridor project. Again, we would like to thank everyone for joining us. Before we close the activity, I would like to ask if our stakeholders, if Dr. Selva, Undersecretary Leonardo, Chair Capuyan, and Director Salguero can join us for a ceremonial photo opportunity. Chair Allen Kapuyan, and perhaps
Hello, ma'am. I cannot open, ma'am.
ay okay sir, sige po. Okay, at the count of 3 we will be taking a quick snapshot to commemorate this important activity. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And again, thank you to the 82 people who have joined us for this ceremonial launch. We look forward to your support and to your participation at the implementation of the BD Corridor project. Again, thank you so much. Happy World Environment Day tomorrow and happy World Environment Month as well. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and congratulations to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.